Sometimes, a moment is so heavy with expectation, you can feel the air change. The pressure builds. Thousands of people hold their breath, all waiting for one thing. For months, the landscape had felt empty. A throne sat vacant, the queen in exile, forced out not by a rival, but by the cruel reality of injury. The whispers started weeks ago. Tonight. Tonight is the night. Tonight, the true ruler returns. You could see it in the eyes of the people in the front row. They weren't just here for a show, they were here for a coronation. They were here to feel that energy again, that undeniable presence that had defined an entire era. The arena was a powder keg, and the rumor was the spark. Every blackout, every commercial break, the tension tightened. The other matches on the card felt like static, just noise you endure before the real music begins. The commentators hinted at it, their voices laced with knowing smiles. "You do not want to change the channel," they'd say. "Anything can happen." But everyone knew what anything meant. It meant her. It meant the return of the nightmare. It meant the woman who had carried the entire division on her back was finally healed, finally back, and finally ready to reclaim what was hers. The world wasn't just watching, it was waiting. Waiting for the first chord of that theme song. Waiting for the eruption. Waiting for Mommy. And then the music hit. But it was the wrong music. A jarring, almost cheerful tune that cut through the heavy atmosphere like a joke. The crowd's collective inhale turned into a confused groan. This wasn't the dark, grinding guitar riff they had been promised. This was Liv Morgan. She walked out, but not with the chaotic, unhinged energy she'd cultivated during her revenge tour. No, this was different. She was calm. She was smiling, a serene, almost peaceful look on her face as she soaked in the booze and the confusion. She wasn't dressed to fight. She looked content. She stepped into the ring, the epicenter of all that expectation, and simply stood there. She didn't ask for a microphone. She didn't gesture to the crowd. She just waited. The arena was baffled. Was this part of the return? Was she here to spoil the moment? The security team didn't move. The referee looked perplexed. This wasn't on the schedule. This was an interruption. A strange, quiet defiance. What was she waiting for? The seconds ticked by, each one heavier than the last, the silence of the crowd turning hostile. And just as the frustration reached its peak, just as the first "Get out" chants began, the building went black. This was it. The glass-shattering sound of that guitar riff. The arena didn't just cheer, it detonated. The Mommy chants were a physical force. She was here. Rhea Ripley emerged from the smoke, not in her ring gear, but in the black street clothes that had become her armor. She looked powerful. She looked healed. She looked angry. She stormed down the ramp, her eyes never leaving the smiling figure in the ring. The crowd parted for her, hands outstretched, trying to touch the returning queen. But she saw only Liv. She slid under the ropes, and the two women stood face to face. The noise of the crowd faded into a dull roar, the world shrinking to just these two figures. This was the confrontation. The woman she injured, welcoming her back. Rhea grabbed a microphone, her voice gravel. "Liv," she started. But before she could finish the sentence, Liv raised a hand, silencing her. Liv's smile was still there, but it looked different now. Sad, almost. She shook her head, as if to say, "No words." And then, she did the last thing anyone expected. She dropped her own microphone. She stepped forward, and she opened her arms. A hug. The entire arena gasped. Was this respect? Was this forgiveness? The end of the revenge tour? Rhea, utterly baffled by the gesture, hesitated, and then slowly she accepted it. She patted Liv on the back. A truce. A moment of bizarre, vulnerable peace. The hug lasted just a fraction of a second too long. Liv's face, hidden on Rhea's shoulder, twisted. The serene smile vanished, replaced by a mask of pure, cold malice. Boom! She didn't just push Rhea away. She shoved her, a violent, explosive movement. Before Rhea could even process the betrayal, Liv attacked. This wasn't wrestling. This was an assault. She targeted the injured shoulder, the very reason Rhea had been gone for months. She slammed it into the ring post, again and again. The referee tried to intervene. Liv threw him across the ring. The crowd's cheers turned to a high-pitched, horrified shriek. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't the triumphant return. This was a mugging. Liv slid out of the ring, her face now a terrifying picture of ecstasy, and grabbed a steel chair. The mommy chants died, replaced by a single, unified sound. No, no, no. There is a specific kind of silence that only follows true, unfiltered shock. It's not just the absence of noise. It's a vacuum. It's the sound of 10,000 minds simultaneously trying to comprehend what they just saw. The cheering was gone. The boos were gone. All that was left was the sickening, metallic crack of the chair hitting Rhea's shoulder. Again. And again. You could hear Liv breathing. Not the heavy gasp of an athlete, but the sharp, controlled breathing of a predator that has finally cornered its prey. She stood over Rhea's broken form, the chair held high, a goddess of violence. A camera panned to the front row, catching a young fan, tears streaming down his face. This wasn't entertainment. This wasn't a heel turn. This was a line being crossed, a promise being broken. We were promised a celebration. We were given a sacrifice. The commentators, usually so quick with a snappy line or a bit of manufactured outrage, were silent. One of them, his voice trembling, just whispered, "My God." Liv wasn't playing a character. She had become something else. She had hijacked the single most anticipated moment of the year and turned it into her own personal, twisted masterpiece. Before the show even cut to a commercial break, the internet shattered. The clip, filmed on a dozen shaky phones, was already viral. The hashtag that had been trending all day, "Rhea is back," was instantly buried under a new one. Liv Morgan. But the reaction wasn't excitement. It was a mixture of horror, confusion, and a strange, dark fascination. Social media became a live-action autopsy of the moment. That wasn't fake. Did you see her eyes? Rhea's shoulder. It's ruined. The sports media, the mainstream outlets that usually ignore wrestling, picked it up. This wasn't just inside baseball. This was a story. Athlete's triumphant return ends in vicious, unplanned ambush. Was it real? Was it scripted? The beauty of the moment was that it didn't matter. Liv had blurred the line so completely that the reality was irrelevant. She had created an event. She had made herself the center of the universe. The revenge tour had been a lie. This was never about revenge. Revenge is a tit for tat. This was a demolition. This was a hostile takeover. She hadn't just changed the narrative. She had burned the book and started writing her own. Backstage, the atmosphere was funereal. The usual sounds, wrestlers warming up, agents yelling cues, the friendly banter. All of it was gone. Everyone was frozen, clustered around the monitors. They had all known Rhea was returning. They were happy for her. She was a leader, the standard bearer, and they just watched her get dismantled. The other women in the locker room, their faces weren't angry. They were pale. They understood the implications. Rhea wasn't just another wrestler. She was the apex predator. She was the one who kept everyone else in line, the final boss. And Liv Morgan, the woman many of them had dismissed as an afterthought, had just walked into the lion's den and torn the lion apart. A power vacuum had just been created, but it wasn't an empty one. Liv was standing right in the middle of it, covered in the blood of the queen. The hierarchy wasn't just broken, it was annihilated. Management was scrambling, on their headsets, faces grim. Was Rhea okay? Was she medically cleared for this? The silence from the producers told its own story. This was not the plan. Or, if it was, only two people knew. Medical staff sprinted to the ring, a stretcher in tow. Liv Morgan was already gone, disappearing back through the crowd, a chilling smile on her face as the crowd rained down genuine, hateful boos. They weren't booing a villain. They were booing the act itself. They were booing the tragedy. Rhea. She wasn't moving. The cameras zoomed in, past the medical team, and captured her face. For the first time, the nightmare looked small. She looked human. There was no anger in her eyes, just confusion and pain. A profound, deep betrayal. This was the ultimate humiliation. Her return, her moment of triumph, had been stolen. The injury that had taken her out of action, the long months of grueling rehab, the pain, the frustration, it was all for nothing. That shoulder, so carefully reconstructed, was now hanging limp, clearly re-injured, perhaps irreparably. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, a new chant started, low and solemn. "Thank you, Rhea." It was a goodbye. They knew in that moment that the Queen was gone. She didn't get one night. She didn't get one promo. She didn't even get to the ring as a competitor. She arrived as a conquering hero and left as a martyr. We have to go back to the hug. That's the key. That's the part that haunts us. Why the hug? A simple attack would have been effective. A promo challenging her would have made sense. But the hug, that was personal. That was performance art. Revenge is a hot emotion. It's fiery. It's chaotic. This was cold. This was surgical. The hug was a message. It wasn't, "You hurt me, so I'm hurting you back." It was, "You thought I was your equal. You thought I was your rival. I am not." It was an act of profound intimacy, immediately followed by an act of profound violence. It was a statement of dominance. Liv was telling Rhea and the entire world that the revenge tour was a misdirection. It wasn't about getting even for her own injury. It was about using that injury. She had weaponized her own victimhood. She lulled everyone, including Rhea, into a false sense of security. She made us believe this was a simple story of A versus B. But she was writing an entirely different book. She didn't want a match. She didn't want a title. She wanted an execution. She wanted to replace Rhea. And to do that, she couldn't just beat her. She had to erase her. We all came to see the most powerful return in history. The title of the story was, "She is Back." We bought the ticket. We tuned in. We waited. We were all looking at the ramp, waiting for Rhea Ripley. And in doing so, we missed the truth. The twist isn't what Liv did to Rhea. The twist is what she did to us. Liv Morgan had already returned weeks ago, but she was invisible. She was just another name on the roster, going through the motions, her revenge tour feeling more like a catchphrase than a threat. She was background noise. We were all just waiting for the real star to come back. The title was true all along. She is back. But we were just looking at the wrong she. Rhea's return was the event. But Liv's return, that was the story. She didn't just interrupt the moment. She became the moment. She didn't ask for the spotlight. She ripped it from the Queen's hands and broke it over her back. The most powerful return wasn't the one we were waiting for. It was the one that arrived when we were all looking the other way. Liv didn't just attack a person. She attacked our expectations. And in that one brutal, silent moment, she finally took control.